Rings of Power Season 2 is cursed. They've just got out of a week of hell where every single time a bad event happened, another one was just around the corner, and it got much, much worse. We started with a horse dying on the set, and like, okay, maybe that's not their fault. It just saw the set, saw the actors, and thought, I don't want this on my CV. But then, just yesterday, the set burst on fire, and was followed up by a THR article that was absolutely disastrous to the reputation of Amazon Studios. The stuff contained in this article is absolutely abysmal, and really showcases exactly why they've been having disaster after disaster, and from what their sources describe, you can really understand not only how these budgets balloon out of control, but why their shows are so awful so often. Because the big headline out of that article was that Rings of Power had absolutely disastrous viewing figures overall, with barely a third of viewers actually finishing the series, but also includes such gems that Amazon decided that they were going to drop a system of ranking shows based off audience scores simply because a creator decided to complain that the audience were a bunch of bigots. Because it turns out that Amazon's focus groups generally tend to prefer broad and less inclusive programming, but that just doesn't work for Dear Graham here. And so rather than do what the audience is asking for, Amazon was so scared of Graham's interrogation that they ultimately agreed to a 4-episode second and final season of his show. Because it's all about self-interest. What do you mean you won't make my show because the audience doesn't want it? They're a bunch of bigots. Okay, sir, yes, we don't want that in our PR. Here's a check. I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a great way to run an audience-facing company for me. Those people don't like it, but, you know, we're gonna give it to them anyway. Relying on data is soul-crushing. I know the testing wasn't great, but I believe in this. Because it doesn't matter if the audience don't want it, as long as the creator thinks it's going to be good, I guess that's good enough. Why would we care about the people we need to give us money? No, the most surprising thing about Amazon's Hell Week is that it wasn't even that surprising at all. And the problems they actually have were so predictable that you wonder why on earth are you paying these people in the first place? Because they definitely don't seem like they have any idea what they're doing or the talent to back it up. But we start at the beginning, back when we had no idea of the train that was quickly heading into Amazon's headquarters. This was just a horse dying on set. You can't blame them for that, can you? We are deeply saddened by it, says a spokesman. The incident took place in the morning while it was being exercised prior to rehearsals. The trainer was not in costume and the filming had yet to commence. And we've confirmed that the horse died of its heart being broken when it realised the show it was about to take part in. But you can say, look, aren't you being a little bit gauche? This was a horse dying. And I'm like, yes, okay, fair enough. I would agree with you if PETA hadn't come out and said that we need to use CGI horses on these sets instead. I mean, PETA already doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to animals, but come on, CGI horses. Have you seen the CGI in Rings of Power? You don't want one looking like that. That'd be cruel in itself. The thing is, though, that was just the start of their troubles. People commented, but they moved on. It wasn't really part of any news story. And then a fire broke out at the set and everybody laughed. At this point, you kind of think there's a higher power after him or something. You can make your own jokes up there. But when plumes of smoke were seen billowing from Bray Studios, it turns out that an electrical fire broke out. What did you do? Get some dodgy builders in on the cheap or something? And firemen turned up while filming had to be stopped for an hour and quickly resumed. Neither the cast or crew had to evacuate the studio site. No, it's fine. You see all that smoke over there? Yeah, all the smoke and dust and everything. It's fine. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. It'll save on the smoke machine and give our set an extra bit of added realism. The thing is, though, they try and downplay the severity of the fire by going, oh, filming was only stopped for an hour. No one had to evacuate. It was paused as just a precaution. But then you find out it was because a workshop was located a distance away from them, and the firemen were there for 4.5 hours putting this thing out. I don't know, but 4.5 hours to stop a fire doesn't sound like a small thing to me. An investigation will take place in order to determine the cause of the fire. Well, my theory is that as it was a storage workshop, maybe it was just the season 1 original recordings finding out about the ratings and committed Sudoku. But you know what they say, bad things come in threes, and a horse died, then a workshop died. And next up, it was Amazon Studios itself, when THR came out with an absolutely massive bombshell of a hit piece with inside sources, executives telling you what they thought about the shows, the ratings, and how Jennifer Sulky ran the company herself. I mean, she can wax lyrical as much as she wants about how you don't reverse engineer true creative vision. But when executives are saying that it's your lack of credibility which is causing you to spend so much, that people are saying, I will never work with you guys unless you overpay me, and you have to pay a premium for being Amazon because those clients would rather work for anyone else. All because Amazon Studios lacks credibility within the industry. And when they go into why, and even the working conditions in the offices themselves, where high-level executives don't even have a desk of their own to work at, you can really understand why nobody takes them seriously. And of course, when I say nobody, I do obviously include the viewers themselves. When we actually find out that Rings of Power ratings were absolutely tragic, with barely 1/3 of viewers finishing season 1 at all, and they wanted over 50% at a minimum. And if anybody's thinking, oh well, they're not far off, when I've got a comparison for you, it will blow your socks off. Because the article itself starts off fairly relaxed. Oh, when season 1 wrapped, it was less defining than hoped, kind of fell short. And Amazon, like other streamers, provides only limited data, which is a conscious choice, because during Rings of Power's run, Jennifer Sulky did tell Deadline that we're still trying to figure out how transparent we're going to be with future ratings. In other words, if our ratings suck, we're just never going to tell anybody about them, and desperately hope no one leaks them to THR, because that would be a disaster. The issue is, leak them to THR they did. Sources confirm that Rings of Power had 37% domestic completion rate, which is customers that watch the entire series, while overseas it hit 45%. And before anybody celebrates about 45%, they wanted 50% completion rate would be solid, but not spectacular, according to insiders. And they needed Rings of Power to be spectacular. It was the most expensive TV series of all time, according to most people. Doing okay, being average, isn't enough when you've spent as much money as was spent on Rings of Power. And yet, is that actually a solid result, as they say? Is that actually average? Because I'm not really sure it is. You see, they got 37% after 8 episodes, but we have a great comparison in Batwoman Season 1. Because Rings of Power had 8 episodes, but Batwoman had 20 of them. And do you want to know how many people stayed through to the end of the series with Season 1? 39.7% watched the entire series of Batwoman, which even with 20 episodes is more than watched 8 of Rings of Power. This wasn't just bad, this was a complete disaster. You managed to make the most expensive show of all time have less viewers than Batwoman, that was essentially 2.5 of your series. Because it gets worse if you actually compare them like for like with 8 episodes each. Because Batwoman at episode 8 still had 54% of their audience. That's right, Batwoman actually hit Amazon's target for success. And I don't know, you can call this a solid result, but any result that Batwoman is hitting isn't exactly a success to me. I'm kind of like, well, if they can do it, you can definitely do better. Except apparently they can't. And they're in complete denial about it as well, because of course they are. As people saw in my last video, it's what Hollywood does. If you don't like the results, well, you know, just give better numbers to me, give me a yes man, and I'll like it anyway. That's fine. Here's your next paycheck, thank you very much. Now, this article does talk about the major awards, which it got, and said, well, it didn't really get any. And that isn't something I care about, but it turns out it is something that's incredibly important to Amazon, which makes it all the funnier that they didn't get any. But then Sulky comes out and says the series worked. The desire to paint the show as anything less than a success. That's not reflective of any conversation I'm having internally, which is very, very dodgy wording, don't you think? She's not actually saying that the series isn't a success. She's just saying that in the company, they're deciding to ignore it. That is a problem with believing that everything is a social construct. You think you can just create your own reality and that exists, right up until someone comes along and tells you the truth about it anyway, and then your sort of utopia explodes. For the rest of us living in reality, we prefer objectivity, but if you're Jennifer Sulky, no, I mean, we're just not having the conversation, so it can't be true. And you have to remember, these people do have entire companies set up just to tell them what they want. We're not having that conversation. So maybe we'll just listen to Parrot Analytics that will tell us that demand only spiked after the season finale. Yeah, demand actually spiked a whopping 55.7 times. Nobody watched it there, and then 55 times the people just surged into the cinemas to watch it. No dear, you may not be talking about how much of a failure season 1 was, but having that conversation with people like the LA Times has got to make you feel just a little bit deluded, hasn't it, when you realise the truth? It's a bona fide hit, but why doesn't it feel like it? With Jennifer Sulky telling Variety, we're cresting towards 100 million customers having watched it, although barely any of them stuck around to finish the entire season. But the numbers paint an incomplete picture, as there's generally no way to verify a streamer's viewership even when they're released. Isn't that interesting, LA Times? Even when you're told it's a success, and say, oh, it's a bona fide success in itself. These numbers are impressive. It turns out, even you don't believe what you're getting told. I don't know, LA Times. Do you believe them now? I don't know, maybe Jennifer Sulky is just doubling down on parrot analytics. The people who think that a one-to-one viewer metric, that doesn't value a whole title, it doesn't capture the entire ecosystem. Or maybe the real reason is that the reason why Rings of Power is going to succeed is because Amazon needs it to succeed. There's going to be a big question about why these people should be there in the first place. If we can't make this successful, why is Amazon Studios even here? There is no other option. If it's not the highest performing thing Amazon has ever done, it's a failure. But the world may never know. I mean, I don't know who this Amazon Studios insider was, but it turns out we've found out now. The first season may have been complete trash, and barely anybody made it through to the end of the season. But the second season, that's where the real action's gonna be. It's currently in production, and that'll have more dramatic story turns, because don't you know, this is a huge opportunity for us, because we absolutely annihilated the last season, so even any increase in viewers will be something we can spin into a success for this one, and we've got a really low bar. The first season required a lot of setting up. Yeah, maybe to make, but not story-wise, not with the characters. You just decided to waffle on for hours with barely any characterization. That was a choice, not a requirement. It's always nice to have the data to prove people are keeping secrets, but it's very difficult to gaslight people who actually do research in the first place. So it's like, I'm glad we got that confirmed. It's very funny. But what came next was even more astonishing. When we start to get into how Amazon Studios itself works, what the people inside it thinks, and maybe why all of this is going on in the first place. Because we get that Amazon Studios generally lags behind on any visible metric of success, with them using minutes watched on the Nielsen ratings as an example, with many current and former Amazon executives as well as showrunners believing that this is no accident. Amazon Studios is a confusing and frustrating place to do business. We have no sense of what the philosophy is. Because while when you watch a bad show, it's easy to just blame the writers who are making a terrible script, but somebody actually hired them. And I always find the interesting thing when it comes to terrible shows is the people that greenlight the shows rarely ever seem to get fired themselves and just continue to pump out trash after trash. And you would think when a series got cancelled, the person who greenlit it would be the one to carry the can, and yet that rarely seems to happen where the person in charge actually gets held accountable for the decisions they've made. And that accountability in this article falls on various different people, from the corporate culture of Amazon selling products to begin with, to Amazon Studios itself seeming to have more money than God, and repeatedly two names crop up, Jennifer Sulky being the main one, and Vernon Sanders. Apparently nobody knows what TV they actually want to make. There's no vision for Amazon Prime. You don't know what kind of storytelling they want to make. Everything seems random. A showrunner says it's baffling that Amazon hasn't had more success when it has more money than God. If they wanted to produce unbelievable television, they certainly have the resources to do it. But do they have the people? Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you've got someone in charge who is allocating those resources to actually terrible stuff for ideological reasons, you are bound to fail. I mean, from Bounding Into Comics, there's an old article which says that Sulky canned the Conan the Barbarian show because it was just full of toxic masculinity, and instead replaced it with Wheel of Time. Although she made sure that Wheel of Time was even more female-centric than it already was, just to be absolutely sure there was no masculinity in it. And as somebody that sat through the abomination of the Wheel of Time, I can guarantee you it doesn't have any masculinity in it. So Sulky is nothing else if absolutely effective in getting what she wants. The problem is more what she wants. Now, Sulky doesn't actually want to have a plan of what a TV studio should make. Apparently, having a plan is the kiss of death, because you can't reverse engineer true creative vision. I would not be surprised if Sulky went around calling herself a creative. It's like, I don't make television, I make art. You know, the kind of person where the door to your office has to be widened just to fit your massive ego through. No, she says, we are programming for 250 million households. We have a broad audience and we need to make content for the 4 quadrants, which is male and female, over and under 35. And I don't know, Jennifer, that sounds quite bigoted to me. It also isn't a plan just to go, we need to cover the 4 quadrants, when your 4 quadrants is literally everybody on Earth. That's like saying you can predict the future of who's going to win the lottery and going, oh, the winner of the lottery will be somebody with a heartbeat. Yeah, congratulations, dear. You really knocked it out of the park with that one. And I wouldn't mind, but the amount of money these people are getting paid, you'd think they'd actually do some work. Rather than going, our target market is everybody. Even this channel has a target market. And admittedly, it's people with the same interests as me, but I'm not Jennifer Sulky. I don't pretend to make art. I just sit here and tell you about what I've seen on the internet in my spare time. But Sulky, she's not concerned about minor things like having a plan of what you're going to do for your multi-billion-dollar company. No, she doesn't want to pressure herself by being more disciplined or more strategic. Who needs strategy? For a multi-billion-dollar company, you don't need direction, just throw money at the wall and eventually something will stick. That sounds like someone worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to me. But it gets especially interesting when they start to work out their audience and how they want to make their shows for their audience. They even go international as everything. It's our business to deliver global shows to a global audience. And then you find out they don't actually care what the audience thinks about their shows at all, which is interesting, when you need the audience to watch them in the first place. Because she can say our goal is to program for everybody, but apparently there's complaints when she actually relies on focus groups, because it turns out that focus groups, the audience, prefers broad and less inclusive programming. Always interesting when corporate culture goes directly opposite to what their customers actually want to give them money for. It turns out that the focus groups wanting this, and Amazon actually listening to this data, led to a clash late summer, due to a series called A League of Their Own. This suggested that the audience found the stories off-putting and suggested downplaying the themes of the show in materials promoting it. A League of Their Own was a show that they knew the audience didn't want. So they're like, okay, quick, hide the messaging in it so that they won't know what they're expecting and may actually turn up for a bit until they see what the show's like, and then they'll probably stop watching. But they might at least turn up for a bit. And they knew this for a fact. They had the audience telling them what they wanted, and then everything hit the fan. Because the co-creator found out that the audiences actually didn't like his show, and he became greatly concerned about bias built into Amazon's system for evaluating the shows, which cared about what the audience wanted, because that's who they need to get money from. Because this system, which is based on what the audience wants, often ranks broad series featuring straight white male leads above all others. One executive called A League of Their Own a proxy for how diverse and inclusive shows are treated. Now, most people would say, give the audience what they want. If they want a certain thing, it's your job to provide that. Your ideas don't really come into it. Your desires don't really come into it. And if you hate what your audience is, then you should definitely be fired, because you're not somebody that could ever create something for them. Because your hatred, your intention, will come through in your work, as has been happening with Hollywood for a long time, actually. But of course, Amazon didn't go down the route of sanity. No, instead, Graham launched an interrogation into the system, questioning multiple executives about this. And so Amazon took this issue seriously and dropped its system of ranking shows based on audience scores. It seems, according to this article, that this guy complained that the audience said his show was crap, and so Amazon decided to stop caring about what the audience wanted in the first place. Absolutely insane. It turns out that the audience don't want what you do, and so rather than changing course and giving them what they're asking for, you decide to just ignore them and start producing crap that no one's going to watch. Is it any wonder that Amazon Studios is failing with that attitude? We don't care what you want, we know what you want, we don't think that's what you need, and so we're just going to shovel things into your face, and you're going to like it. That may have worked when there are very few channels available, but in the age of internet streaming, there are so many places I can go for entertainment. There is more entertainment existing right now than I could watch in my entire life. I don't need you. I don't need your entertainment. And if you're going to provide crap, I can happily ignore you for the rest of my life. Amazon Studios as a company can't afford to do this, but they were so scared of Graham and his interrogating them on the system of simply listening to the audience that, they backed down. In fact, this show itself was one that Sanders passionately supported. Personally, I don't think you should ever passionately support something that the audience doesn't want. But either way, after his complaints about renewing shows based off the audience actually watching them, Amazon did ultimately renew his show. It's all self-interest. It's all performative. I'm going to complain and call your paying customers bigots because they don't like what I'm making. People are so scared of baseless accusations that they will happily renew a show which they know their audience don't want. Seriously, it's no wonder they're losing loads of money. And even despite this, Amazon veterans are still complaining that we're too dependent on those same test scores. This leads to a load of white guys with guns. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh no, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that if we listen to the audience and give them what they want, we'll get all these good shows out of it. The horror! I can't imagine running an entertainment company where you think it's a problem to create the shows that your audience wants because they want something that you don't. But apparently, relying on data is soul-crushing. I know the testing wasn't great, but I believe in this. You shouldn't believe in this. If the testing for your show isn't great, you shouldn't believe in it, because that is objective information that you should be going off. I don't care about your personal bias of what you think people should have. I care about that they actually want to pay you for. So should you. But that's not always what Amazon cares about. Because Amazon, like Paralytics, doesn't really care that much about viewers as such. Because they say, we have a significant goal to get people to sign up to Amazon Prime. They actually look at cost per first stream, which is essentially where your Amazon Prime subscription gets linked to whichever show you watch first on the platform. This is also why Bezos has said in 16, when we win a Golden Globe, it helps us sell more shoes. As if you have Amazon Prime, you're more likely to shop there. This is why Amazon Studios aim to win credibility in Hollywood with sophisticated shows beloved by critics. Things like Transparent, about particularly modern topics, which won 8 Primetime Emmy Awards and created buzz Amazon wanted to attract top producers and actors. And yet, Transparent lagged behind Amazon's top shows in viewership. Similarly, Good Girls Revolt was a critically acclaimed show about gender inequality in the New York newsroom. If that's not a show that doesn't have you leaping onto your sofas to watch right now, I don't know what will. But apparently, for some reason that blows my mind, only 52,000 first streams worldwide were actually garnered for that, which put the program's cost per new customer at $1,500. Amazon cancelled it after 1 season. Personally, I think it's a load of cope. I think people buy Amazon Prime to buy your stuff and get the free shipping. I don't think many people are doing it for Amazon Prime Video. That's an added extra, not a reason people subscribe in the first place. And I can't confirm this is how it works, but from the description, if you only need to watch the first show, you could have subscribed to Amazon Prime previously and never watched any series, and then along comes a series. That's the first show you've watched even though you've been subscribed for years, and it still gets tagged along anyway. That gets credited for a Prime subscription that was just accidentally linked to it. And if that show had never existed, well then you would have been subscribed anyway. Maybe internally their data is far more complicated. But from what I've seen in this article, I have my doubts. But it did make me laugh when they talked about how important critically acclaimed shows were. We need those critics, we need those Golden Globes because it gives us prestige in order to bring in talent. Which is why Rings of Power, not really winning any major awards, is far funnier when you know the context of how insulting that is to Amazon, when I just don't care about it at all as a customer. If the thing is, though, that credibility, especially when it comes to Jennifer Sulke, seems to be a big issue for the company. Because one executive said it was different when Jennifer Sulke first took charge, but he thinks if he had a couple of heavy hitters, somebody with more credibility and direct interaction with the development of the shows, it would be so much easier to spend less. Because people think, no way in hell am I going to deal with these guys unless they overpay me. You're like 3rd or 4th priority on their list. Agents are direct about it. You guys pay a premium because you're Amazon. They have clients who would rather work with anyone else. All because nobody actually trusts you and your reputation. Now, apparently, some people say that Sulke is a charismatic leader who has a great touch around talent, but her talent seems to be, I'm just gonna get whatever's hot. The thing is, though, internally, she seems to be in a political battle with Hopkins, because Mike is a lot about budgets. But that's not something she reacts well to. I don't know, is that a massive red flag to anybody when the head of your company doesn't react well to budgets? Seems like budgeting is a major part of the job, and getting a great deal for your company should also be a big deal for you. But no, this is Amazon. They have all the money in the world. I can spend whatever I want. I don't need to care about the money. Is a great way to lose a fortune. Because while you think that Mike, who cares about budgets, may be a sort of limiting influence on Sulke, a top executive at another entertainment company says his lack of creative experience hampers his ability to limit spending on shows and movies. That's why he says yes when Jen says, we've got to pay Simon Kinberg $8 million for this project. In other words, according to top executives at entertainment companies, Jennifer Sulke is overpaying for talent and nobody can stop her. They don't know any better, so when she says, we need this, they go yes, and everyone else is looking at the deal thinking they're insane. That's how you end up with things like Red Shirt, where Tatum got paid $25 million, $18 million went to the director, add in Kinberg's $8 million for writing and producing services. How on earth you get paid $8 million to write something? I have no idea. But this deal represents one of the highest, if not the highest, payment for an original pitch in Hollywood deal-making history. They declined to comment because they probably couldn't believe their luck. Then you've got the Nike movie Air, where Affleck was very complimentary about Sulke, but it might be because she went and paid $160 million for the show. Matt made more money on Air than any movie but Bourne. She just took it off the table, said an executive. Industry sources say it cost far less to produce, but she doesn't care. Just give them the money. Amazon has all the money in the world and I don't care about budgets. Why should I negotiate? There really is no worse of an employee for a company than somebody who doesn't care about profit, who runs your budgets and just thinks, don't worry, I'm sure they've got more in the back. You end up overpaying for shows which were far cheaper to make. Let's face it, you could have made it yourself. No wonder she doesn't care about plans or strategy. It seems like she's just on a crazy shopping spree. We've got to get everything for everybody at any cost. And it's all because of the attitude that views don't actually matter, that other things can matter more than views. And don't worry, the more you spend watching Amazon Prime Video, the more you are to renew your membership and shop on the site. I'm sure Amazon are just making money on the back end. Don't worry, we can lose more. None of this sounds like any way to run a business to me. But what do I know? She's getting paid millions and I'm in my front room. The thing is though, in this article, there does seem to be a lot of entertainment executives who are also bewildered by how you're running your business. I mean, getting rid of audience ratings wasn't very smart, but having done that, I can understand why nobody warned you that Rings of Power was trash before you showed it to us. And the amount of internal political fighting that goes on this company, just from this article, seems to be insane in itself. You see, Amazon renewed The Peripheral. It was okay, I watched it. It was kind of just mid the entire way through. I think there was an intriguing world they set up, which they just didn't do enough with. But somehow, this cost $175 million. Honestly, having seen it, I don't know how they did that. But this had a lukewarm audience engagement, and it probably should have been cancelled, said the insider. But they made a mega deal, and the political capital they would lose with Lisa and Jonah would be too great because they've got other shows coming. So they renewed it. They renewed something costing $175 million for 8 episodes just because they were scared to tell the people who ran it they didn't want it anymore. I mean, I can understand some people having social anxiety. I'm just saying, if you run a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you probably shouldn't. If you're running Amazon Studios, you probably should be okay to phone somebody up and just go, nah, we don't want season 2, mate, I'm sorry. You could have paid me to do it. I would have saved you $175 million. But they didn't want to because they're also producing Fallout. You know, they've already made one mid-show, so you definitely don't want to get rid of them. You should probably just get them to make another incredibly mid-show as well, while earning $20 million a year since 2019. One insider said, we cede decision to powerful producers while hold the line on other producers who do great work for us. So just because they've got prestige and a name, we don't want to scare them away, even when they make mid-entertainment, which nobody watches. I do not understand this industry. Everybody cares what everybody else thinks. Nobody wants to annoy that big guy over there with the great reputation, even when he's crapping on your yard. People are so scared to offend and so used to being surrounded by yes men with such massive egos that they will lose hundreds of millions of dollars making crap rather than tell them no. All the while, crushing people just because they don't have that reputation, even when they're producing the better work. And that's not the only deal which has fallen through for them. Many deals have failed to produce anything at all. Lena Wraith got a 2-year deal worth $8 million, which yielded nothing in November 2021. September 2019, Phoebe Waller-Bridge was going to make a Mr. and Mrs. Smith series, but within a few months, she departed. Her 3-year deal was worth $20 million a year and bore no fruit. And yet they still renewed it. I have paid you $60 million and got nothing for it, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm definitely going to sign on that dotted line again. This is insanity. Who is making these deals and why are they still at your company? Seems to me that you just want the prestige of these names and don't actually care if they don't do any of the work for it. Because now, they're getting Waller-Bridge to write a Tomb Raider series. So, you know, that should probably be another few $20 million a year for her there. While some Amazon insiders have questioned how much she'll actually even contribute to the series, noting that Amazon has been looking for a showrunner to help write and oversee it. So she's getting $20 million a year when it doesn't seem like she's going to be doing all that much, as she's going to get somebody else to write it for her. I do think you get into a situation with a company where you just have so much money and it's so easy and it just keeps coming that you don't care about being efficient. You don't care about waste and you just lose millions and you'll just pay millions and nobody cares about the bottom line because nobody cares about budgets. What you need is a money man in charge, and instead, you've got Jennifer Salke. So Sanders can bristle at the assertion, but when you start describing someone as a perfectionist, it's basically excuse for going, yeah, trust me, I'm really working on it, bro. It's just not ready yet, so you get nothing. I mean, what is she? Scared that the quality she produces for you is not going to be high enough? Have you not seen your bar? I don't think she could produce something lower than what you've already made. Actually, scratch that. No, after Velma, you can always go lower. That's what I've learned. There is always something worse. But a showrunner with considerable experience sees it differently. Amazon don't learn from their mistakes. We can't do more deals like that. And this is a place where even the co-heads, which Sulky is hired. Nobody knows what he likes. He always seems so sincere, but you never know where you stand or what shows does he care about making. It's hard for a talent to trust him. It seems like Sulky came in, didn't care about the budgets. So Sanders came in and was hired by her, and nobody knows where he stands. And if there's one thing I think most people know instinctually, if someone is very non-committal about something, it generally means they don't care much about it, or don't want to tell you no. And you shouldn't have somebody in a leadership position who is scared of confrontation and telling you no. I've worked in various different jobs, and one thing that is very common, especially at places with lots of employees, is so many people spend their entire time trying to not get nailed down on anything because they don't want to be the one to blame if something goes wrong. They don't want their name to attach to anything. So like you send out a question and you get back 10 responses that have all been tied to it for some reason because nobody wants to be the one to give you the answer themselves. Because if you distribute the blame, no one's going to get in trouble for it. That is what this reeks of to me. Nobody knows what he likes. He can't get pinned down on anything. Oh, he always sounds like he likes it, but you can't actually trust him. And then you've got Amazon moving into films with things like the James Bond franchise. Barbara Broccoli controls, and Jennifer Sulky immediately pissed off by mentioning a possible Bond television project which Broccoli would not want. The thing is, I actually remember this. Radio Times ran an article that the TV series had already been agreed upon by Barbara Broccoli. Greenlit a new adventure reality television show. And it sounded horrible, I didn't want it, and it can do nothing but harm the James Bond brand. Although I think we can all agree they've already done that themselves. And even despite everything, you've got the people at the top who seem to have no idea what they're doing and don't care about money or what the audience wants. You've got the fact that in Hollywood, nobody respects them and they have to pay a massive premium just to get talent because nobody wants to work there. And then you find out what it's like to work there, and you kind of understand why. What irks entertainment executives is that they're a supersized tech company which doesn't mesh with traditional Hollywood practices. They talk about the difference between cash and stock value, and say that because most people are paid in stock, you're not incentivized to stick your neck out because you're marking time to get as much stock out as possible. Entertainment is a hit-driven, risk-taking business, but presumably if you get fired, then you don't get paid as much because you're stock, mate. So everybody's playing it safe, maybe going for years without actually producing anything, all so they can get as much money on the other side as possible. And all I'm saying is, have you ever considered performance-related pay, where you get paid basically nothing unless the audience wants what you actually make? I don't know why this hasn't been a thing in Hollywood before. I was like, no, obviously you've got to pay a lot for the highly talented people. Like, do you? Because if they actually had that much talent, if they were so convinced about their creativity, their vision, their art, then surely they would be more than happy to make a deal where they got paid when the audience actually watched their stuff. And if they produce crap, they get paid nothing. Hey, maybe it's me, but performance-related pay really seems to encourage performance. Well, they wouldn't like that because they suddenly have to care about the audience for once, wouldn't they? But it does get worse when you find out only top executives have offices. Even high-level executives are assigned to cubicles, and since January, most people don't even have a desk. They've been put to agile seating, meaning they work at unassigned cubbies in designated neighborhoods where they have to stick their belongings in lockers. Amazon Studios is a place where even your high-level executives don't even have a desk, let alone an office. This is a company that will pay you $20 million a year to produce absolutely nothing and then renew your contract, but they refuse to pay for their high-level executives to have a desk. There's a reason why people who are high up in a company like an office. It's not just the fact that privacy allows you to get more work done because you can concentrate better. It is a sign of respect, and having at least a desk of your own for other people in the company is also a sign of respect. Going, we can't even be bothered to give you a desk, mate, that's insulting. And yeah, apparently that's the way Amazon does it. We don't care about budgets, unless you're one of the plebs, in which case, just sit over there somewhere, mate. I'm sure you'll find a place. Yeah, maybe you could sit on the coffee machine. Just give it a wipe down while you're over there. That'll do. When you're getting rid of measurements for your TV shows, like actually caring what your audience wants, is it any surprise that you don't make shows that your audience wants? Why are you listening to one of your creators who has a vested interest in getting his show renewed when he's complaining that his show isn't being renewed because nobody likes it? And yet Amazon seems to be bothered about everything except anything that would impact the quality of their show. They don't care what the audience thinks of the shows. They don't seem to care about the quality of the work environment of the people making the shows, when you can't even be bothered to give them a desk, which seems to be massive corner-cutting measures, which you could assume was, oh, it's to save money, mate. Except for the fact that you're wasting money on a load of names, seemingly just for prestige, because they're not making you any shows. And the shows they are making you are mid at best, which the audience don't want. Why are you renewing these people's contracts? Why doesn't Sulky care about budgets? And why, when someone makes something that fails, are they still making more shows for you? Why are people failing upwards? There are so many questions to come out of this article, and it just seems like nobody has any idea what's going on. And then when you find out that the people in charge, like Jennifer Sulky, don't have a plan and actually look down on the idea of having a vision or a strategy in the first place, it's kind of mind-blowing. No wonder it seems like nobody knows who to go to get a show made. Nobody knows what to bring you, what shows you like. When you go, I like everything, I just need to make a show for everybody. This is a ship without direction. You've got a captain. They're just not giving any instructions, and nobody is being held accountable for anything. This article doesn't make Amazon Studios look like a professional, multi-billion-dollar company. It makes it look like a school playground of just everybody running around in random directions, and there might be a teacher at the back somewhere, but they're not really doing much. They're just making sure that no fights break out, because that would be bad for PR. With all of that in mind, I am no longer surprised that Rings of Power barely had a third of people finish the series. I'm no longer surprised that they actually employed the 2 people who made Rings of Power in the first place, despite them having absolutely no experience. Because they said, if you've got a big name, we're not going to say no to you. But we do rule with an iron fist the lesser-known names. And that's exactly what they got with Rings of Power. They brought those 2 guys in, and they could rule them with an iron fist, because let's face it, what are you going to do? Spend another 10 years in Hollywood without getting your credits on anything? And for them, it was their dream job. They were on Easy Street. They can pump out anything. What are you going to do? Fire them? Doesn't seem like you fire anybody. Even somebody who's gotten paid $20 million a year and hasn't actually made anything for you. This has been one of the most eye-opening articles about a company I've read, because it is so in-depth and gives such an astronomical impression of completely headless chickens running around that I have no idea why Amazon Studios is even still around. And let's be honest, if it wasn't linked to Amazon, then it wouldn't be, because they are clearly relying on Amazon's bottomless pit of money. But the issue when you do that is eventually someone looks over and goes, you're not actually making us any money, mate. Because those analytics people that you think can spin you anything that'll make Rings of Power a success because it needs to be, not because it is. Eventually someone's going to want the real profitability numbers. They're going to ask, why is it that only 37% of people stuck around till the end of the first season? And when that happens, they're going to actually get a money man in charge. Somebody cares about budgets, unlike Jennifer Sulky. And that person is going to have an attitude a lot more like mine about your company than like Jennifer Sulky's. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.